growth and as a leader. I want to begin by thanking you for your partnership in missions through the cooperative program, because of your giving to missions through the cooperative program, and for those of you who are part of the Nelson Baptist Association, for those of you who give to your local association, we're able to offer this event today at no cost to you to provide a meal because of your missions giving. So I want to thank you for your partnership in that regard. We're grateful for Nelson Baptist Association, for Stan Lowry and Chad, who serve on the team to plan these events with us. And we're grateful for Parkway Baptist Church today. And I want to recognize Marshall Adkins. Marshall, would you come and give greetings from the church? Marshall is the pastoral associate here at Parkway Baptist. So Marshall, if you'll give introductions and pray.
Absolutely. Well, good morning, brothers. It's a joy to have you on campus today. We love these events. We love hosting you guys. So thankful that you guys came out and pray it's a blessing this morning. So why don't we go ahead and pray together and trust the Lord with our time. So let's pray. Father, we're so grateful for the privilege of knowing you through Christ. You are holy, you are just, you are righteous, you are other. And we praise you this morning. We worship you. We lift our hearts in thanksgiving to you and adoration to you. And we thank you for this moment, these moments that we get to spend together, to sharpen one another, to learn and to grow and to be strengthened. So Father, we pray that you would be glorified in everything that is done and everything that is said here today. But God, would you have your glory? And would you be glorified in the strengthening of these brothers for your name's sake? And it's in Christ we come. Amen.
Amen. It's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Dan Summerlin to you today. Dr. Summerlin is pastor of Lone Oak First Baptist Church in Paducah, where he has served faithfully and effectively for the past 18 years. Dan not only leads well at his own church, but he invests in other leaders, and I'm appreciative of that. He takes time to come to an event like this and share with us, but he's also very active within his own region in meeting with leaders, pastor leaders, and trying to pour into them and to equip them. So I'm grateful for your investment in that regard. I'll tell you the type of person Dan is. A few years ago, we had a Super Saturday event at his church, and that was a week that Dan was on vacation. And Dan could have very easily sent a staff member to give greetings on behalf of the church, but Dan was there that entire day, and it was his vacation week. So that's the type of person he is. Dan has served as president of our Kentucky Baptist Convention. It was the years 2012 to 2013. He served on a number of committees, administrative committee and others with the Kentucky Baptist Convention. Been a great missions partner in that regard. He's also served with our Southern Baptist Convention as on the executive committee of our Southern Baptist Convention. He currently serves as an ambassador with the North American Mission Board, which means that he has an assignment for calling and encouraging pastors in the state on behalf of the North American Mission Board. So we're grateful for that. He is an avid with a capital A Alabama Crimson Tide fan. Okay. So War Eagle's not in his vocabulary, right? Also a Nashville Preds fan. But most of all, he is an avid follower of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. And so, Dan, thank you for coming and being with us. Come and share on leading in Christ.
Handouts. Guys, I'm going to give you a handout. Don't be scared. It looks like a lot of information. It is. We'll go quickly. You can doodle if you want to. Some people like to take notes. Some people like to doodle. Whatever you want to do, that's fine. So, and some of it toward the end, we'll make it a little faster, but this is just a handout. I'll be moving. Somebody, will you be okay if I move around? Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Because I'm a mover. So thank you for being here. I am an Alabama Crimson Tide fan. Now that Alabama's playing, I feel like there is some normality back in the real world. Here's the irony. When I chose this topic, COVID-19 was not here. So we're talking about leadership. I started working on leadership in crisis, then COVID hit. So a lot of what I'm going to be saying, you're going to be thinking about COVID-19, you're going to be thinking about a lot of different issues, but I promise you, this applies to anything. So, but as I'm going through this, we're all going to be thinking about COVID. Alan made a comment. I do meet with young pastors. I've been doing it over 10 years. Once a month, I meet young pastors at my study. It's anywhere from 3 guys to 15 guys. Most of the guys in their first year of ministry. And this year, one of the men said something, and he said, well, Dan, you don't understand what it's like to be in your 20s as a pastor. I said, I was a pastor in my 20s. And then all of a sudden, someone said, wait a minute. You were a pastor in your 20s, and 30s, and 40s, and 50s, and I'm in the 60s now. And they said, you're old. I never thought about that. I am. But I've been a pastor that many times. I've been on staff in the 70s. I was a pastor in the 80s, 90s, 2000, 2010, 2020. So I've seen a lot. Let me tell you something. I've never seen anything like COVID. I've never been through anything like COVID. We'll talk a little bit more about that. It has changed. It's a game changer. Whatever you do is going to be wrong. Whatever you do is going to be wrong. And so it is causing a lot of stress. So we'll talk more about that maybe during Q&A. But I want you to understand, if you're under a lot of stress with COVID, you're not alone. We all are. Everyone is going to go through a crisis. Everyone's going to go through a crisis. And here's what I know about crisis. A crisis will change you. You will never be the same after a crisis. Now, hopefully, it's going to be a good change. But we're all going to be changed. And we shouldn't be surprised that we're going to go through a crisis, because Jesus told us that. Jesus told us in John chapter 16, verse 33, he said to expect problems in the world. In the world, you have tribulation. In the world, you have trouble. So we shouldn't be surprised when we have trouble. We shouldn't be surprised when we have conflict and crisis. So everyone's going to go through a crisis. But if you are a leader, it's harder, because now it affects our followers. And because it affects our followers, there's a lot more stress. So the question is, how do we handle a crisis? So let's talk about what is a crisis. Webster Dictionary says that it's an emotional significant event or radical change of status in a person's life. I love the way dictionaries make this more complicated. But it's right. It's going to be emotional. Something's going to happen in your life that's going to be significant, that's going to change you. If you know the Greek language, crisis comes from a word meaning decisive moment or a decision to be made. Every crisis, you're going to have to make a decision. Every crisis, you're going to have to make a decision. If you're in counseling, my major is in psychology, in counseling, a crisis meant something out of control. So if somebody comes in our office and they are in a crisis, they're out of control in some area. You put all that together, here's what a crisis is. A crisis is an emotional, significant event that would change something in your life that is out of your control, that requires a decision to be made in order to survive. That's what a crisis is. Something's going to come into your life, it's going to change your life, it's going to be a significant change, it's going to be out of control, and you're going to have to make decisions. And that's why it's tough, how to make decisions when you have followers. Here's what I know. Every leader will go through a crisis. And that is when your skills are going to be tested and refined. When we look for a staff person, I can tell you the first question I'm going to ask you. Tell me about the time you went through a fire. Now, if they don't know what I'm talking about, I'm not even going to hire them. If you're in the ministry long, you know what I mean. I want to hear about your fire. I want to hear about your crisis. And then, what did you do about it? How did you handle it? Because in my world, as you know, same as yours, if you have a staff person that's never been through a fire, guess where they're going to go through a fire next? Us. Yeah. Guess who's going to get burned? Us. So every person on our staff has gone through a fire. They've explained it to me. Because here's what I know. You're going to go through a crisis, you're going to be tested, and you're going to be refined. So look, after holding your handout, let me give you some observations on facing a crisis. Every major crisis will do two things. Number one, a crisis creates unexpected problems. Unexpected problems. Now we know that. Every time we have a crisis, you're going to face problems that you never thought about before. We are facing issues with COVID, I promise you, we have never talked about. The idea of masks. I mean, just, do you wear masks? When do you wear masks? How do you wear masks? How do you enforce masks? Do you talk about masks? I mean, these are questions we're spending hours on in meetings. And I thought I would never talk about this. I mean, this was never even on my radar. It causes unexpected problems. But also, crisis creates unique opportunities. Every crisis you have, you're going to have some opportunities. We have a saying in our church, don't waste the crisis. Don't waste the crisis. When a crisis comes in, there are things you can do, the organization can do, the church can do, that you couldn't do if you didn't have a crisis. Greg Purcell is a pastor, said a crisis creates opportunities in 3 categories. First category is practical. He said there are some practical things you can do now because of the crisis. For example, when you're in a crisis, all of a sudden your focus gets narrowed. Isn't that true? All of a sudden you're thinking of one thing. That's very practical. Before a crisis, you're thinking of 1,000 things. A crisis comes up, you're thinking of one thing. We had an ice storm at our church, in Paducah. And all of a sudden, everything that we were thinking about became focused on one thing, helping people. Became very practical. How can we help people? How can we do certain things? Second is financial. Financial. A crisis can create financial opportunities. I'm not saying use it, but sometimes it gives us opportunities. For example, for us, when COVID hit, we did not have video capability. None of our services were online on video. Now, there's a reason for that. I didn't want it online. I wanted it to be the very best we could. I knew there were certain things we couldn't do. So I kept saying, let's do it. Ironically, 2 years ago, I said 2020, we're going to put video capability in our church. Had no idea it was going to be a crisis. But because of COVID, guess what we could do? All of a sudden, we could put in better equipment. Now people wanted better equipment because they're home. And we had to borrow the equipment 23 hours. We went from no video to a video. We had to borrow the equipment. And people saw it. They said, we love this. Could you do it? They went, hey, could you have more than one camera? Well, if you insist, if you want to do it that way, okay. And all of a sudden, we got better equipment than we would have without the crisis, and the people were for it. So financial, there's certain things you can do. The church is more willing. We've done some projects during COVID that probably we would not have been able to do short term. But now, people said, let's go ahead and do it. Since we're not spending money in one area, let's spend it in another area. Number 3 is missional. Missional. A crisis creates missional opportunities. I promise you, every time you have a crisis, you're going to see hurting people. And you may see hurting people you never even thought about. So a crisis will show you how to reach out or to minister. Again, there are people in need that you weren't even thinking about a month ago, 2 months ago, and all of a sudden they're at the forefront. We through some, like the ice storm, there was a trailer park that we really weren't ministering to. But because of the ice storm, now we have an opportunity to minister to that trailer park. And it opened up some doors. So even when bad things are happening, there's some opportunities. I want to give you a 4th one. I think opportunity is informational. Informational. Every crisis you go through is going to reveal information about you and your organization. And it's amazing. It is amazing what a crisis will reveal. Crisis is going to reveal to you your weaknesses and your organization's weaknesses. Crisis is going to reveal to you your strengths and your organizational strengths. A crisis is going to reveal to you your fears. For example, again, I go back to talking about COVID. Some people we're finding out there are some people in our church members, who really have an unhealthy fear of death. And they're saved. And we're dealing with it. Some is more of a fear of their families, fear of the future. I did some sermons on the idea of fear. We're also in a crisis. You're going to find out your temptations. In April, I'll talk about this maybe a little bit later. In April, I did a video for our church of what to expect because of COVID. And one of the things I said, and Dr. Gray, we may have even talked about it, I may have even said this, we're going to see more counseling than we've ever seen before. We're going to see more broken marriages than we've ever seen before, and more addiction. Because COVID, like any crisis, is a magnifying glass. And it will show your weaknesses. In a crisis, you'll find your greatest temptation. That person who's tempted for alcohol, that person tempted for drugs, or overeating, or porn, or whatever it may be, a crisis will show you your greatest temptation. So keep in mind, a crisis can be turned into an opportunity. So we've been talking about crisis, and I promise you, all of you are thinking about COVID, but I want you to understand something. A crisis can be anything of any size church. I've been a pastor of 4 churches. My first church was a rural country church in Mississippi. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay, there's more people in this room than my first service. Okay, you have to understand that. It's in the woods. I'm talking about, Joe was, we had to go toward town to go hunting. It was way out there. And we were growing, got to about 25, 35, and about 40. And then I had a man who wanted to take over my ministry. He didn't lie, but he sowed dissension. He would ask questions. I'm sure we could trust the pastor, but who's with him when he counts the money? Now, by the way, I don't count the money. He didn't know that. Everybody balance the book after he writes checks. I don't write checks. He didn't know that. We lost 3 families because of this man. Now, long enough, I can lose 3 families. I'll be upset, but we'll survive. When you're running 45 people, 3 families is a crisis. That was a crisis. I never dealt with that before. I didn't know, here's somebody who's against me. Here's someone who's trying to tear up the church. That was, for me, a crisis. Changed everything. When my second church was in Tuscaloosa, it was a country church. It became a suburbs. And one of our biggest crises, we had a plant close. And I lost 25% of our Sunday school teachers and leaders. That's a crisis. I mean, one day you have all your Sunday school teachers there, and you come back the next week, and 25% are gone. Our leaders are gone. And therefore, some of our money is gone. That became a crisis. How do you deal with it? At Lona, Huntsville, I was in Huntsville City Church. We had a crisis. The city wanted to close us down, literally. We were doing some construction, and they found out that when they built the building themselves. They made a mistake, and we were, quote, a death trap. That's what they called our church. And so the city planners, the fire marshal, and about 10 other men with notebooks this thick comes into our conference room with yellow tape that says condemned, and says, we're here to condemn your building. That's a crisis. And I remember the word death trap was the phrase I kept hearing, oh great, we're in a death trap. And how do you handle that? I never been through this. At Lone Oak, our biggest crisis, we had a little event that a lot of churches have all the time. We had a beast feast. Some of you might remember this. And this will be our last beast feast. And every year we gave away maybe a 4-wheeler, a bow and arrow, shotgun. Well, last time we decided to give away 10 guns. 700 churches in Kentucky gave away a gun that year. National media got hold of it. We were in USA Today, Time, MSNBC did a story on us. We had people all over calling us. I had calls from London, Sydney, Australia. People went on our Facebook to write pornographic languages. People would call us to chew out and cuss out our secretaries. Fox got it. Fox News was in it. Stephen Colbert, my son still thinks this is cool. Stephen Colbert did a feature on us. And we were in a social crisis. Now listen, if you've never been in a social media crisis, you can't stop it. Yeah. You can't stop it. We were getting attacked everywhere. And see, the media lies. Y'all know that? There's a newspaper in New York State who said we were giving away AK-47s. We were not. We were giving away shotguns. And another newspaper in New York, I was always in New York, said we were giving away free pistols to children. We couldn't stop this information, and it was a crisis. So everything can be a crisis to you if you've never been through it before, and you're going to learn from it. 1 Samuel 7:12, one of my favorite verses. Thus far, the Lord has helped us. And that became our phrase. Thus far, the Lord has helped us. So the question is, how do you lead in a crisis? If you're a leader, you're going to lead. When there's a lack of leadership, the crisis will last longer, and the crisis will be more severe. I will promise you that. That's why a lot of churches go through crisis a lot longer. They'll go through generational crisis because of lack of leadership. A crisis does not make the leader. You've heard this before. The crisis reveals the leader. It doesn't make you the leader. I read a lot of biographies, and for example, U.S. Grant was an unsuccessful businessman before the Civil War. He fought in the Mexican War, then he became an unsuccessful businessman, came to the Civil War, and became a hero. Churchill, same thing. He failed at many things, then the war came, and then he became the leader. Same thing for Lincoln. It doesn't make you the leader, it reveals who you are as a leader. So let's talk about what we should do in a crisis. Number one, be in the front of your people. Be in the front of your people. When there is a crisis, the people need to see you. You see, in a crisis, we need to think of our people. We need to be in front of them, because here's what happens. Your presence is going to give them confidence. We've seen this in the national level, haven't we? Remember George Bush after 9/11? People still have that image of him being in New York City. But George Bush did go to Katrina. That was a mistake. Rudy Giuliani, same thing. After the World Trade Center, he was there on site. He did press conferences on site. He walked the streets of New York. It gave people confidence. Churchill did the same thing. Churchill, during the bombings, would go and he would walk through London. And people would see Churchill. Well, if he's walking, it must be okay. Lincoln met people every day. He would have a certain time during the day, they would have a long line of people meeting the president. During the war, that he would meet them, shake their hand and talk to them. We see preachers, Martin Lloyd-Jones, during the bombing of London, he would visit his people. When there is a crisis, you have to be in front of your people. And I want to say something, and I hope I don't offend you. I really do. But I was shocked at the number of pastors who took a vacation during the beginning of COVID. Now, that may not have happened this side of the state. But a lot of my friends say, well, we're not meeting church, we're going on vacation. That's the worst time to go on vacation. You know, because you need to be in front of your people somehow. Sheep need a shepherd, especially in a crisis. And things are changing so rapidly every day. In a crisis, there are going to be new thoughts and new fears. Our people need to see us often. And I don't mean going out. It may be just on video, maybe on Facebook, maybe on YouTube, whatever it is. They need to see us. And here's one. There's a psychological reason people need to see the leader. When the people see us, we absorb their fears and their feelings. We absorb their fears and their feelings. Here's how it works. The leader absorbs what the people are feeling, and we replace it with something else. Make sense? So if they're fearful, what are we going to replace it with? Faith. If they're uncertain, what do we replace it with? Confidence. That's how it works. They have all these emotions, and we're going to replace their emotions by them watching us. Same thing for fears. If they're fearful, we bring them calmness. If they're, again, uncertainty, we bring certainty. If they're confused, we bring clarity. There's a quotation in your notes. You know, that we have to confront the major anxiety of their people and their time. So being visible is crucial in any kind of crisis. The crisis I mentioned earlier, I was in front of the people. My first church, I was in almost a small church. I was in almost everyone's home saying, it's going to be okay, it's going to be okay, it's going to be okay. I had to tell one man not to go kill the guy. That's another story, but that's small church, you just never know. Same thing, my second church. I was in front of the people. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. God's going to take care of us. God's going to take care of us. In Huntsville, hey, it's going to be okay. They're not going to condemn the building. We're going to do whatever it takes. During COVID, during the social media crisis, I was constantly saying, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. And people started looking at me thinking, well, maybe it's going to be okay. So we need to be in front of our people. Now, when we're in front of our people, it's not just being in front of our people. You've got to give them something. We've got to give them something. So just don't think, well, we got to be in front of the people, that's everything. No, you've got to show them. So number one, you've got to be calm. You've got to be calm. We need to be calm. We've got to be honest. I'll talk about that in a moment. We've got to be honest with our emotions. We really shouldn't show fear, uncontrollable fear, but we need to be calm. Leaders will absorb their people's feelings. Kipling said, keep your head when all others around you are losing theirs. In the beginning of the crisis, they need a voice of calmness to say, hey guys, we're going to make it. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. Because when the beginning of a crisis, you'll notice this every time. People don't think clearly. In a crisis, people do not think clearly. A true leader is one who can step up and calmly guide the people. And it helps because sometimes you've been through that crisis before, they haven't. We need to be calm. I was at a funeral one time. One of my staff people was doing the funeral, and during the funeral, a man in the funeral service had a heart attack. Has that ever happened to anyone here? Never happened. I mean, I'm just, I'm in the audience, I'm in the congregation, and all of a sudden, man, I saw him plump over, and my staff person, this had happened to him before. He was calm. I'm freaking out. What do you do? What do you do? What do you do? Stan, as our staff person's name, saw what was happening and just calmed everybody. Hey, we have an incident. If I just remain calm, if I just stay seated, they're going to call them medical people. He is play by play talking. And afterwards I said, do you calm everyone? I was upset. I didn't know what to do. And he said, I've been through it before. He said, the first time I didn't know what to do. But his calmness, that entire congregation there, about 150 people, no one panicked, no one freaked out. During COVID, I put out videos every week and I talk to our people. I talk about feelings. I wanted them to see calmness. Some did it every day. In hindsight, maybe I should have done it every day. I didn't. I did it about twice a week. But I wanted people to see it's going to be okay. Number two, we need to be empathetic. We need to be empathetic. In a crisis, our people need to know you care and understand their feelings. They need to know you care and understand their feelings. The tendency in a leader in a crisis is to be so dogmatic that you don't care about your people. You're trying to demonstrate such calmness that you become arrogant. What we need is to be empathetic. To say, I understand you're hurting. I understand your fears. In modern times, we had two presidents that did this the best of anyone. That was Bill Clinton and Ronald Reagan. Bill Clinton and Ronald Reagan, in a national crisis, came on television, and they had this empathy. We understand what you're going through. So don't be afraid to say to our people, I know what you're going through. I know what you're feeling. If they don't think you understand, they're not going to follow you long. So we need to have that calmness, but be empathetic. Number three, be authentic. Be authentic. The worst thing we can do is, we need to be calm. The worst thing we can do is pretend what we're not. So in April, I gave that talk online, And I talked about fear and anxiety, and then I said this. I said, by the way, I'm struggling with that too. I'm struggling with some fear. There's some things, I don't know how we're going to do it, but it's going to be okay. That's all I said. That's not, brilliant. And I was amazed the number of people said, thank you for saying that. That you were struggling with anxiety. I couldn't sleep. I said, look, I'm not sleeping at night. It's going to be okay. You got to be authentic. If you don't know the answer, tell your people you don't know the answer. But then you say this, but I will find out. There are too many leaders who pretend like they have all the answers, and they don't. It's a lot more effective to say, I don't know how we're going to do this, but I will find out. And one of the reasons is their answers are out there. As followers of Christ, we have the answer. But we may not know the immediate answer, but we know the answer. Next, be factual. Be factual. In a crisis, you've got to deal with facts. Here's what I know. I know this without a shadow of a doubt. In a crisis, people lie. And people will believe the lie faster than believing the truth. I promise you. Again, the first church, people believed the lie. I didn't count the money. But all of a sudden, they thought I was counting money. I had another crisis at another church. Long story short, here's the quick version of it. No one talked to me for 2 weeks. No one. That's like one person did. They were so mad at me. I was new there. They were so mad at me, they wouldn't talk. So I'm about to preach and no one will talk to you. You know how you shake hands? They won't shake hands. I only been there a year. And I found out someone has told a lie. And they believe a lie. A few weeks later, they began to realize, well, that can't be true. That's not him. And it worked out. But I learned then, people will believe the lie first. And they'll believe the lie faster. So we have to deal with the truth. Therefore, guys, in a crisis, you're going to be learning. You're going to be learning a lot. You're constantly learning what you're going through. So, during that building issue, I learned a lot about buildings. I learned a lot about codes. I'm talking to people. Doing social media, I found out things about social media I never knew. There are ways, for example, if you Google, please don't do this now. You Google our church at one time, we were the radical redneck gun giving away church. But the first 20 sites. And someone came in and said, we can change that. I said, what do you mean? All you got to do is change the analytic. I don't even know what you're talking about. Within a week, you Google our church, we were the Vacation Bible School sponsors. How did you do that? He said, there's a way. And so don't take time. If you want to Google about all that, don't do it all at once. I don't want our name to have to talk again. You're going to learn. Man, y'all gonna think I've been through a lot. I'm old. Did I tell you that? I'm old. We just went through a lawsuit at our church. Child got hurt. That's all I can say about it. But what I learned is not good. Let me just say that. You don't want to go through a lawsuit. Pandemics. Man, I've been reading about pandemics, the history of pandemics, because I got to deal with the facts. And if you don't know everything, you can delegate the facts. Again, the building, I don't know much about buildings, but there was a man in our church who knew everything about the building. I said, would you be my spokesperson? You're going to be the one dealing with all this. The legal issue, our executive pastor, I said, no, you're going to be the one, you're going to be the spokesperson. When we talk about it, you're going to be the spokesperson. Because I know enough, but I don't know everything. We deal with the facts, which means we must define reality to our people. I love Max Decree quotation. The leader's first responsibility is to define reality. I will say that every week at our church at some point. I tell our ministers, we define reality because people don't know what's going on. Peter Drucker said, a time of turbulence is a dangerous time, but its greatest danger is a temptation to deny reality. A lot of times, it is a big deal. Oh, we got plenty of money. No, you don't have any money. You've got to define reality. Because again, in a crisis, rumors are going to go rampant. And you got to put out the rumors. And so you've got to define reality, be factual, and your life needs to back it up. Don't tell people everything's okay and put a for sale sign outside your house. Okay? You've got to back up what you're saying. So we've got to be factual. But here's the key. I think this is in your notes. We got to be factual with hope. Be factual with hope. Churchill is one of my heroes when learning about leadership. You know the story. Churchill became back in power when Nazis were bombing London. And Churchill told the people they're not going to surrender. You go back and read his speeches, he said, it's going to cost us a lot. It's going to cost us blood, sweat, and tears. 1940, Britain thought they were going to lose the war. Churchill never said, we're winning. And he never said, we're going to surrender. A lot of people misunderstand that. All he was saying, it's going to be a long time, and we're not going to give up. He gave them hope. It's going to get bad, but we're going to win. Without saying we're going to win, we're not going to give up. He gave them reality, but he gave them hope. He's a hero of the future. We may be fighting on the shore, we may be fighting in the street, but hey, guess what? For the sake of mankind, we're going to stand together. That is what I'm talking about. We need to give the facts with hope. You know, in the book of James, James says, consider it all joy, my brethren, when you encounter various trials, temptations, whatever. Literally, the Greek word is problems. He says you're going to face trouble. But you read James, he said we can overcome it. That's what I mean. In a crisis, you got to give the facts, but you got to give it with hope. 2008 was a big year for a lot of churches. What happened in 2008? Y'all remember? In the stock market? Mm-hmm. We had people lose a lot of money. We had a lot of senior adults lose a lot of money. We didn't know we were going to make budget that year. We did. We didn't know. And so I stood before the church and talked to them about it. Now, we may not make budget, but it's going to be okay. We have some alternative plans. We do this. We're going to be okay. It might get bad. It might be tough. But it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay, guys. You know, God is with us, but we might have to suffer a little bit. And by the grace of God, we didn't. At the end of the year, we made budget, but for a few months there, we weren't. You got to give hope. In April of this year, that talk I gave online, people thought I was crazy, which, by the way, they may be right. I told our church in April, we're not going to run 1,000 until next year. Now, April, remember, we're talking about March 13th is when COVID really hit. In April, I'm telling the church, based on what I've seen, what I've researched, we're not going to be running 1,000 to fight next year. And I want them to know, I said, it's going to be okay. You know, we're not going to lose, we're going to lose some people, but we're not going to lose many. They're not going to come, but they're going to be watching online. We're going to be connecting. We're not going to give up. We're going to hang in there. It's going to be a slow process, slow trickling in. Just be okay. And at first, people thought I was, why do you say that, preacher? No, we're going to have in August our big celebration. No, we're not going to have a big celebration in August. What about Christmas? At Christmas, we're going to be packed. No, I can tell you right now. And here's how I knew that. I did 2 funerals. Between March 13th and April, whenever I did that taping, I did 2 funerals, and I watched people respond. And they weren't hugging one another in death. I saw children not hugging their father. I saw daughters not hugging their mother. In a few weeks, this is how they're thinking. The longer we do this, it's going to be longer and longer. That's what I based it on. But they needed to hear that. Don't lie about the facts. Be hopeful, but be honest. And here's why. They need to hear the bad news straight, so when they hear the good news, it actually means something. And so when I give good news, the people celebrate. There's something called the Stockdale paradox. During Vietnam, thousands of American soldiers and POWs. What they went through is horrendous. They were held in tiny cells, they were tortured, beaten, starved. At the end of the war, only 591 survived. Now the question was, psychologists, why did those 591 survive and the others didn't? Medal of Honor recipient, Commander James Stockdale, was at Hanoi Hilton from 65 to 73. 8 years. Now think about this. He was there 8 years, and he was tortured in isolation, in prison, no rights, thought he would never see his family again. They asked him, why did those people, 591, survive and others didn't? What he said is fascinating. This is what he said. Quote, "That's easy." Talking about those who died. They were optimists. Well, what does that mean? He goes on to say, the prisoners who thought it was always going to get better and they would be released soon became depressed faster. Those who always believed they would be out by Christmas and they were not, they couldn't handle it. Stockdale said, those who were realistic with hope survived. Those who were realistic, saying, we probably won't make it out of here alive, but I'm not going to give up, they survived. They went quickly through the stages of grief, denial, and anger, and bargaining, depression, and acceptance and survival. They maintained the faith that they could prevail at the end, which you can't afford to lose. They did not confuse fantasy with reality. And by the way, this is called the Stockdale paradox. That you be realistic. It may not get better, but hold on to your hope, and you survive there. Jim Collins, who's a business guru, looked at 11 companies who were failing and then survived. He found out the same thing. He found out those who accepted the brutal facts of reality, but with hope, survived. Jim Collins said, you must never confuse faith that you will prevail in the end, which you can never afford to lose, with the discipline to confront the most brutal facts you currently reality, whatever they might be. So for us, we got to be honest, factual, but with hope. You see, managers tell you what it is, leaders tell you what it is and what's to come. And that's the difference. John Gardner said the first and last task of a leader is to keep hope alive. I hope that we can finally find our way through a better world, despite today's action, despite our own inertness and shallowness and wavering resolve. Number 3, be focused. In crisis, leaders, we need to be focused. See, in a crisis, the leader will be the one who will focus while the other people are panicking. The leader is going to be the one focused on a lot of different things. The people aren't thinking about anything. There are a lot of different areas we need to be focused, but let me give you some. And some is so obvious, but we forget. Number 1, we need to be focused on the mission. We need to be focused on the mission. In a crisis, someone needs to remember the mission. That's the leader's job. Why do we exist? Because here's what happens. In a crisis, people start thinking, how do we simply survive? And then they forget why they're surviving for. During COVID, and I apologize, I keep talking about COVID because it's what's on our minds now. I kept hearing complaints about our church, from our church members, because they forgot our mission. You don't need a building to be a church. You know that? Our people didn't. I've been there 18 years. Found out they didn't listen to me for 18 years. Well, we're not meeting in the church, but the church is a building. It's not the church. The church is people. What do you mean we're not going to have a choir? Can't have church, you don't have a choir. Yeah, actually you can. Nothing against choirs. What about Pastor? We can't meet without a written program. Yeah, we can. That's not the mission of the church, to have a program. You know, I was amazed how many people forgot the mission of the church. They kept looking at all these little things, complaining about, why don't we do this, why don't we do this, how come we're not doing this? And all of that means nothing. The mission of the church is to be the church and to reach out for the Great Commission. And as leaders, we need to remember the mission. We got to keep the big picture in front of all the people. In a crisis, I mean, in all honesty, what we say is we don't have all the answers, but we know where we're going. I don't know all the answers, but I do know where we're going. And you got to keep focused because your people will not. It's amazing the information I'm getting from our people, and it's just disheartening. I'll be honest with you. I even told our deacons this. It's really disheartening to hear what people think of priorities that are not priorities. Number 2, focus on your people. Focus on your people. You know, leaders always put the people first. And in a crisis, we continue to keep them first. If you cannot put your people first, you're not going to be a good leader. They'll know it. I promise you. If you're looking out for yourself, they'll know that. Focus on your people. So how do you do this? When you think about your people, number 3 things there. Number 1, you need to stabilize your people. Stabilize your people. Beginning of a crisis, you've got to make sure they're okay. Ice storm, we visited, we called COVID-19, first thing we did, we took all our senior adults, everyone who's ever been sick on our prayer list, and we called them in 48 hours. We passed it out. One thing we did, Alan, you'll love this. We asked our Sunday school teachers to call all their class members and check on them. On Sunday, we call our teachers, would you call everyone today and check on them? They all did it. Here's what I heard. Man called me. He's a pastor. I've never done that before. What do you mean? I've never called all our members before. How long have you been a Sunday school teacher? He said, it only took less than an hour. I'm going to start doing this every week. I call, how are you doing? And we had 2 questions. How are you doing? How can we help? 2 questions. He is so excited now that every week he's calling his class. How many times have we told him to do this? But stabilize your people. Make sure they're okay. Make sure they have what they need. Make sure they have realistic hope. Number 2, organize your people. Organize your people. In a crisis, you need to organize your people so they can get active. Give them assignments. Again, at the beginning, maybe just your staff, and then your deacons or elders, and then your Sunday school teachers. But find a way to organize your people so they can get things done. In a crisis, you need more than you need. The more people you're involved, the better. So, stabilize them, be sure they're okay, organize them, and then finally mobilize them. You send them out. Give them an assignment. So we organized our people, gave them names, and now we're telling them what to do. We're mobilizing our people to go out. We're checking on especially our senior adults who can't do yard work. We're checking on people who need help around their house. So we're sending teams over there. We're mobilizing our people because we're focusing on our people. Because they may not be coming to the church building soon, but they're still part of the church. Focus on your people. Number 2, whatever next. Focus on your priority. Focus on your priority. In a crisis, there are hundreds of things they're crying out for us to do. The reality is, you got to know what your priority is. In fact, we're constantly asking that as a leader anyway. Constantly asking, what am I to do? What am I to do right now? Peter Drucker said, first thing first and last thing not at all. And one thing about crisis, you will find your priority. It's amazing to me what happened when COVID really hit. Our calendar was full. We're a large church. We have, We got something every day. The calendar was wiped clean. And we became busier than we've ever been before. Every minister kept saying, why are we so busy? Because we're doing what we should have been doing in the first place. We should have been ministering to people, calling people, praying with people, contacting people, but we have substituted that with programs. That's what happened. And so we have to, and when this is all over, we're going to be looking back at our priority. What is it we need to do? By the way, the best way to ask is, what is it that I can do that no one else should do? What is it that I can do that no one else should do? Is a good way to find the priority. Next, focus on doing what is right. This is kind of connected to priority, but I'm going to say it this way. The temptation in a crisis is to do the easiest thing first. It may not be the right thing to do. The temptation in a crisis is to cut corners. Get a little sloppy in some things. But we can't do that. You've got to focus on what is the right thing to do. Not only morally, obviously, but also just how to do it. You got to hold on to your convictions and put the needs of your people ahead of personal comfort and convenience. And that's what happens to a lot of guys in a crisis. They look out for themselves first, and they don't do what is right. Next. By the way, I can do a whole talk on this one. Focus on your attitude. Focus on your attitude. Our attitudes are crucial. John Maxwell said, how we view things determine how we do things. How we view things determine how we do things. I tell our guys all the time, I tell the church this, your attitude is a choice. It's in your notes. Your attitude is your choice. You choose your attitude. I cannot choose what's going to happen to me, but I can choose how I will respond to it. One preacher said it this way. God chooses where we go through. God chooses where we go through. We choose how we go through it. And I believe that. I don't know what I'm going to face. I have no control over what I'm going to face. But I can control how I will face it. I mean, I can't change the world around me, but I can change the way I see the world. Let me tell you about a guy you already know. This is a man in the Bible. As I get older, I'm more amazed by him than anyone. His name is Joshua. You know the story of Joshua. Joshua, one of the 12 spies, they go into the land. Remember the story. They come back. Two guys, Joshua and Caleb, says, we can take them. They're giants, but we can take them. Why? Because God told us to. I mean, God told us to go in the land in the first place, so what do? Apparently they're Baptists, they formed a committee, and they decided to go in there. God never told them to form a committee. God never told them to spy the land. God said, go take the land. So what do? Form a committee. They're Baptists. Joshua and Caleb comes out, he says, hey, we can do it. God's on our side, no problem. 10 guys says, ain't no way. Ain't no way. They're giants, we're grasshoppers in their sight. In Egypt we had better food. And so the people voted. I'm telling you, they're Baptists. The people voted and decided not to do it. So what does God do? God says, go back to the wilderness for this generation to pass. Okay? We read this all the time. Okay, no big deal. For 40 years they're walking in the wilderness. Don't you think of this? You're the leader, you're Joshua. You know that as long as these people are alive, you're not going to the promised land. And you're their leader. Every day you get up, come out of your tent, you stretch, and you see Eli. Eli's still alive. Well, not going to the promised land today. Because of Eli. And I wanted to. I was obedient. 40 years I'm suffering because of these stupid people. But I'm your leader. And he led them. Joshua, you don't see any anger in Joshua. I mean, think about this. 40 years because of them. And then it gets down to one guy. Eli's still alive. And Joshua looks out. He's still alive. I can't go to the promised land because of you. But I'm going to be your leader. I'm going to lead you. I'm going to be positive. I'm going to do everything I can to get everyone ready for 40 years. Now let's be honest. You have someone in your church, it may be just one person, one family, because of them, you're not growing. And you're hacked off at it. And you're looking at them thinking, if that family would leave, this church would take off. That's what Joshua was going through times of need. Great attitude. Joshua's attitude was, I'm a leader. I will lead them. God has given them to me. I will love them. I will take care of them. I will prepare them. This is my assignment, and I will do it. And the older I get, the more I'm amazed about Joshua. That here's a man who had a great attitude. Someone said this to me one time. How attitude determines your look in life. Two diaries. A dog diary and a cat diary. Here's the dog diary. 8 a.m. Dog food. My favorite thing. 9:30. A car ride. Oh, this is my favorite thing. 9:40. A walk in the park. Oh, this is my favorite thing. 10:30. Got rubbed. I got petted. This is my favorite thing. 12 p.m. Lunch. My favorite thing. 1 o'clock. Played in the yard. My favorite thing. 3 o'clock. Wag my tail. Oh, this is my favorite thing. 5 p.m. Milk bones. My favorite thing. 7 p.m. Got to play ball. My favorite thing. 8 p.m. Watch TV with my people. Oh, this is my favorite thing. 11 p.m. Sleeping on my bed. This is my favorite thing. Here's the cat diary. Day 983 of my captivity. My captors continually to taunt me with bizarre little dangling objects. They dine lavishly on fresh meat, while the other inmates and I are fed harsh and some sort of dried nuggets. Although I make my contempt for their rations perfectly clear, I nevertheless must eat something in order to keep up my strength. The only thing that keeps me going is the dream of my escape. Your attitude. Some people are dogs. They have great attitude. Hey, my favorite thing. This is a great day. Great day. Great day to be alive. It's raining. It's great to see rain. Their place don't have rain. If I lived in the desert, I would love to see rain. Oh, it's not rain? Hey, I've been in the rainforest. There are people, they get rain there all the time. I'm glad. That's a good attitude. And then there's some people, I don't care. I have a member. It's becoming a joke of what he will be negative about. He has never been satisfied. In 18 years, he's never been satisfied. And every Sunday, we kind of try to come up. We try to be positive and see how he can turn it around. He's a cat. Attitude is how you look at life. And by the way, I found out that people have good attitude overcome their problems faster. They do. Gratitude will make and break you. And by the way, if you want to see people's attitude, look at their social posts. Read Facebook and Twitter. I can tell you about your attitude. I can tell you about what you post, what kind of attitude you have. Because your attitude will either make you or break you. Your attitude is either going to heal you or hurt you. Your attitude is either going to make you friends or make you enemies. It's either going to make you happy or make you miserable. It's either going to make you a success or failure. And here's psychologists have studied attitude. This is not just opinion. This is a fact. Because your attitude will affect so many different things. Here are a couple of them. It'll affect your relationships. Your attitude, I promise you, will affect your relationship. Who we are, how we view life will determine how people look at us. You know what? No one wants to be around a negative person. The only people who want to be around a negative person is another negative person. And you know where they are. They sit together at your church, usually to the right. While you're preaching, on the third row on the right, that's where they are. I don't know why they sit there. They do. They're negative people. And they just get negative with one another. But the positive people, that's the people we want to hang out with. And your attitude will determine how people will, act toward you. Attitude will change your problems. Your attitude determines about how you view problems. If you're hurting, a bad attitude will make it worse. Again, they've done studies on this. They've done studies to give people a bad attitude and then give them a problem solved. Bad attitude is harder to solve a problem. It really is. Looking at how we're going to do this. Third, your education. If you have a bad attitude, you're not going to learn as fast. You go in a classroom, you go to any classroom, if you've got a bad attitude about that class, it's hard for you to learn, and you say, well, I knew this class wasn't going to work. Oh, I knew that confident student. I knew that teacher didn't know what they're talking about. Guess what? It probably was your attitude. And in a crisis, you've got to learn so many new different things. You're going to have to listen to other people. People with bad attitude don't listen to other people. You got a bad attitude, and here comes John. John has the solution. I don't want to hear John's solution. I'm tired. Well, John may have the solution. I didn't choose the crisis, but I can choose how I respond to the crisis and even the education part of it. And so many people, they'll come up and, we're not going to get out of this. We're just not going to get out of this. And then, well, how about this? Oh, that's not going to work. That's not going to work. That's not going to work. Yeah, it's not going to work. I can tell you right now. Why? Because your attitude. Church not going to grow. Church not going to grow. Yeah, it's not going to grow. Well, how do you know that? Because you said it's not going to grow. I can tell you that. I talk to pastors all the time. I talk to pastors every week. And I can tell by their attitude what's going to happen. Your attitude makes everything. How you do it. There are so many examples of great attitude, but my favorite was Thomas Edison. 5:30 a.m. in the morning, December 10th, 1914. 10 buildings caught fire. His notes, his experiments, incredible blaze. 10 buildings. It took 6 to 8 fire departments to rush to the scene. Remember, and Thomas Edison, we're talking about chemical fuel too, so everything was destroyed. Edison's son, Charles, tells the story. Saw his dad watching the fire. And he saw his son, he walked over to his son, he said, hey son, go get your mother and all her friends. They're never going to see another fire like this again. And when they came back after it was all over with, Thomas Edison said, well, it's going to be all right. All we got to do now is get rid of a lot of rubbish. Start over. Never missed a beat. That's the attitude. Couldn't do anything about the fire. So, you got to have a good attitude. Next. By the way, if you want to help your people have a good attitude, just preach the book of Philippians. Philippians is about attitude. You cannot read Philippians without seeing attitude. Remember what Paul said in Philippians 2:5? I have this mind yourself, which is yours in Jesus Christ. Think like Christ, have the attitude of Christ. That's what Philippians is all about. So if you want to change the attitude of people, Philippians is one of the best books. Number 4, be forward thinking. Be forward thinking. Leaders, we got a plan. Our people are not. They're going to plan for their thing. They're not going to plan for the whole organization. Planning is we're not trying to predict the future, we're trying to shape the future. You got to learn how to plan. And in a crisis, people have trouble seeing the future. In crisis, people have trouble seeing the future. Even now, I have church members, they cannot imagine next year. They told me, Pastor, I can't see us. You think we're going to get back to where we were? Yeah, we're going to get back to where we were. In fact, we're going to be better next year. I think by Easter we'll probably be running 1,000. After that, I think we're going to grow faster. We're seeing some great things happening during COVID. When we open, and with social distancing and all that, 7 to 8% every weekend were first-time guests. Blew me away. Why are they coming? Well, they saw us online. Our people started inviting people online. There's a thought. And I said, we're getting more people watching online, but we got first-time guests every week. It's going to be really good. But they can't visualize it. And so we're planning for that. You got to plan for the future. Because our people are not gonna plan. And I hear this all the time, and I know you do too. After a crisis, people come up to me and say, Pastor, I never saw that. I didn't see that coming. You know, you said this was gonna happen. Yeah, because we plan. Followers think first of themselves. Leaders think first of others. That's the difference. Your followers are going to think first of themselves. Your Sunday school class is going to think about their Sunday school class. They're not going to think about the whole organization. Your people are going to think about them first. You're thinking of others. You're thinking of the whole organization. I will say this. When you think ahead, it's going to take courage. Because no one does it. And so when we are planning ahead, people are going to disagree. Let me give you 3 things we must plan on, and all 3 will cause problems in your church. I'm sorry. But I'm being realistic. I'll give you hope. We must plan on what must be done first. What must be done first. In a crisis, there are a lot of things you need to do. You're the person who's going to say, we've got to do this first. There are going to be people who will disagree with you. I promise you. Well, we need to do this first. No, we got to do this first. You will be criticized the moment you say, we're going to do this first. Number 2, what must be done differently. What must be done differently. In a crisis, you're going to do something differently. And the moment you say that, our people can't handle it. There's a long list here. Our church, we tell our people, our church, we're not talking about other churches, our church, we're following the guidelines of social distancing. Now, we have people in our church who do not believe COVID exists. Okay? We have people in our church who think Jesus is coming today, and it's the mark of the beast. So, we have extremes, and we got war going on all the time. Every other church does too. But we did social distancing, and so we had it different. We register our people the first few weeks. You had to come to our church, you had to register. And here's why. A couple of reasons. It seems simple to me, but number 1, we're asking people to wear masks. You know, we're big on security. Why would I want to have people wearing masks in the church who I don't know who they are? I mean, we just went through all this training on security, on how to handle a shooter, and now we're saying, hey, y'all can wear masks. So, number 1, we wanted that. Number 2, what we did, I'm not saying y'all did what we did. We took our auditorium, and based on the registration, we had seating. So, if you register 2, in our church, we got some spots just for 2 people. We got some spots for 3 people, 4 people, 5 people, up to 7 people. So when you come, you say, I'm here, there's 2 of us. We have Mark on our pew with Post-its. Oh, we know where. So we could do social distancing well. And 3, we want to do name tags. Because what we've learned, we are forgetting our people's names. We don't know who they are anymore. And now that we're in masks, we really don't know who they are. And so this was just a way. Now, we didn't do this for our health department. We deleted the list after Sunday, so we couldn't give it away anyway. But you would have thought to say, we're registering people, that I had said, we're going to sacrifice a goat on the altar. Some of our people were furious. I have never registered to come to church. I'm not coming back. We are going to mission. I'm sorry. Well, what else can I say? I mean, if this is a hill you want to die on? Man, I felt bad about it. I really did. It tore me up. But we were doing something differently. The music we had to do different. We have 3 services, 2 services with a choir, 1 service without a choir. We couldn't have a choir, so we didn't have a choir. But now the music's different. We heard that. Now we're back in life groups. We're extending. You don't have to register now. So we did things differently, and we're hearing it. It's just, but that's what happens. Third, we must plan on what we must stop doing. In a crisis, there's some things you've got to stop doing. And people don't like it, especially in churches. So that's why you need to have courage when you plan. Peter Drucker said, whenever you see a successful business, someone has made a courageous decision. I totally agree. Next, be faithful. Be faithful. As Christian leaders, we have an advantage over the world. We have God. We have Christ. That's how we can be positive. That's our attitude. We know who holds everything in his hands. You see, here's the deal. In every crisis, you've got to make a decision, and you've got to tell your people, which is bigger, the crisis or God? That's the issue. We need to remind our people, God is bigger than any crisis. God is bigger than any crisis, because they forget. Let me take one little rabbit real quick. Every crisis you will go through, someone in history has gone through it before. Okay? You just understand that. Someone has gone through the crisis. So, when we went through a lawsuit, I called friends who've been through lawsuits. 2008, the financial dump, I called churches, hey, tell me if you've been through a financial crisis. Social media, I had one friend, I called him. Now everyone's calling me. If you go through a social, you're attacked social media, people are calling me now. But I called a guy I knew in Alabama. So everyone's, but a pandemic, there's a lot of pandemics in history. 17th century, John Donne was a man who was in London. He was a pastor. Most people know him as a poet, but he was a pastor. He went through 3 waves of bubonic plague. The first one, last one actually killed 40,000 people. John Donne went through that ministering to people. In fact, he became ill while he was ministering to people. And he began to think about what was happening. And this is what he discovered. He said, a crisis always produced fear. And everybody was scared of the plague. Everybody was scared of dying. They were scared of losing, scared of poverty, scared of rejection. That's what he noticed about everything. Fear was the main reason of the crisis. And then he said this. He said, famine is not really the problem because God supplies our needs. Death is not the problem because we have heaven. He concluded the best course of action was a proper fear of the Lord. He said, for that fear can supplant all others. And so he prayed this prayer, as thou hast given me a repentance not to be repented of, so give me, O Lord, a fear of which I may not be afraid. I love that phrase. Give me a fear of which I may not be afraid. It's the fear of the Lord. As ministers in a crisis, we are to be faithful. They need to see our faith in God. They need to see our faith in Him. If we are faithful because of the size of your God determines how to handle a crisis. I think I put in this quotation. I don't know who said this, but I love it. If God put a Goliath in front of you, then He thinks there's a David inside you. I don't know who said that. I love that quotation. We're going to finish 11:30. Is that what we said? 11:30, eat and Q&A.
We can do Q&A. Last thing.
You want to do that? We'll do it either way you want to do it.
We'll quickly go through this, then we need, and how you. Like the last part was I just want to talk about how to prepare for a crisis. Guys, most guys prepare for a crisis during a crisis. You need to prepare for a crisis before the crisis. John Wooden, we're in basketball country, everybody knows who he is. He said his favorite part of being a coach is practice. He said when practice is perfected, the game is automatic. There's a misspelled word there. He said, but when opportunities come, it's too late to prepare. I believe that. I think sometimes we wait too late to prepare. I have friends who are Navy SEALs, and they would say, the more you sweat today, the less you bleed tomorrow. You prepare today. So let me talk a little bit about how to prepare now for the next crisis that's coming. choices you need to make before the crisis. Very quickly. Number one, your values. You need to, that's who I am. Who I am. Find out everything you can about yourself before the crisis. What is your personality type? How do you handle stress? I've taken many personality tests. I know who I am. Recently, I took another personality test, and the person said, "You're the most self-aware person I've ever tested." Because I did a personality test, Berkman test, and they said, "What do you think who you are?" And I explained who I thought I was, and the guy said, "Man, I said, well, I've done this. I know who I am. I know how to handle. I know what I do under stress. I know who I am. You need to know who you are. You need to know how to relax. How do you handle stress? I mean, all that. You need to know who you are. Number two is mission. Before the crisis, what I do. What do you do, guys? Whatever your job is at the church, what is it you do? And you need to understand that role. I've learned that sometimes we don't know what our mission is, what I do, what is the purpose of the church. I won't say it that way, I'll do it another way. My son was a journalism major. He worked at a newspaper, he's a youth minister now in Florida. And we had this talk. Newspapers across America are going out of business. You may know this. And here's why. They forgot what business they're in. Newspapers thought they were in the paper business. They're in the news business. And because of that, they started losing ground. Well, sometimes we forget our business, even in a church. So you need to know before the crisis, what I do, what's the mission. Number three, responsibility. What I must do. What am I responsible for? And you might need to get with your leaders, whoever you answer to, whoever you talk with, and say, what is my responsibility? In a crisis, how do you want me to lead? You want me to take the lead? Every church is different. My church in Huntsville is deacon-led. They brag about it. All decisions came from them until I changed it. So, over time. But early on in the crisis, they made all the decisions. We couldn't make a decision unless the deacons met. My last church. Loan up, I make the decisions. In a crisis, we had the authority to do things faster than some churches. If I was in Huntsville, I don't know what would have happened. Because we could not make decisions unless the deacons met. That was the rule. Well, guess what? They're hurting right now. Hope this is not going to be online. Next. Potential problems. What I should do in a crisis. What I should do in a crisis. Go ahead now and start thinking about a crisis. I learned that I'm an Alabama fan. I went to the University of Alabama, so I'm a big fan of Bear Bryant, Nick Saban. Here's something Nick Saban does. Bear Bryant did too. Nick Saban does it more. Bill Belichick does it a lot. In a practice, they'll be practicing a game, and they'll say, all right, we're in the 2-minute warning. Offense, if you score first, you go in. Defense, you got to stay out here 45 minutes for exercise. Defense, if you stop them, you go in. Offense, you have to stay out here for 45 minutes. That's our plan. Knowing that whoever, and they got both, and they got the offense and defense on the sidelines cheering the team on. Then Saban will blow a whistle, and he'll point at the left tackle. You just broke your leg, you're out. So, come in. Blow the whistle, do the first play. Second play, blow up. It's raining. Turn the sprinklers on. Now you got to play in the rain. Or they have a bucket of ice. They put a football in the ice. Oh, it's freezing. We don't play well in freezing weather in Alabama. And now you got to play and give the ball to the center. The center guy has a wet, cold ball. The quarterback has to learn how to hand off. You know what he's doing? Let's see what happens. Sometimes they'll turn on the sound so you can't hear. Sometimes he'll say, quarterback, the crowd can't hear you, so you can't do vocal calls. You got to do hand calls. He's looking at what can go wrong. We do this at our church all the time. as a staff. You know, we'll be having a plan, and I'll say to our children's minister, oh, I am so sorry you were in that car wreck. You're not here Sunday. Guys, what we're gonna do? It's Friday, he's in a car wreck, who's gonna take over? Every minister can do somebody else's job. Every minister has a sermon in case I can't be there. Every minister knows somebody else's assignment. We talk about what if the building, what if the electricity goes off. I carry, in our pulpit, I have a little light in case the electricity go off, I'm still preaching. We just go ahead and plan stuff like this. You know, we look at questions, you know, in 2008, we had a plan to cut our budget 25% overnight. We already have that plan. We have the plan now. We had to. We didn't have to, obviously. Go ahead and start thinking, what can go wrong? And start planning. The choices you should make when the crisis begin. Number one question, what do I need to do now? What do I need to do now? The crisis comes. What do I need to do now? For COVID, our first choices about church service and finances. We didn't know about our finances. We went ahead and had a plan. On Monday, we had a plan in case we had to cut budget, in case what we had to do, and also about church services. Number two, it sounds weird. What do I need to do in the next 7 days and 3 months? Here's what I mean. I need to know what I'm going to do now. I need to know what I'm going to do this week and then 3 months from now. You got to keep this ahead of you. Because if you just play it day by day, 3 months is going to sneak up on you. So early on in our process, we're going, okay, 3 months from now, what are we going to be doing? Well, let's go ahead and start planning that. What do we need now for 3 months? You know, people come back, we're probably going to need a lot of hand sanitizer. So guess what we did the first week? We bought as much hand sanitizer as we could find in Paducah. Smart move, because you can't find hand sanitizer in Paducah there for a while. We bought it all. Now, we shared it with people. I don't think they were greedy. We found out some nursing homes couldn't get it. We sent ours, but Lone Oak First Baptist Church sending you hand sanitizers. Some other places. So, but we thought, what do we need 3 months from now? What is it out there that no one's thinking about? Well, we need to do this, we need to do this, and we planned it out. Third, what resources do I have and need? What resources do I have and need? So in a crisis, what do I have, but what do I need? And again, early on, we needed media, technology. We didn't have the technology we needed. So we made a list. We got our team together. What do we need? How to get the finances. And like I said, they want to spend more money than we originally had planned, which is great. And so we were planning that ahead. And finally, choices you should make during the crisis. We already talked about some of these. Communicate constantly. You cannot over-communicate in a crisis. Number two, continually anticipate problems. I do two things. What can go wrong and who will complain? I have a list of the complainers. I know their names. They're on speed dial. Some of them I find it's just better for me to call them to get it out of the way. I'm being honest. If they're at church, go ahead and so-and-so's coming to church. You need to go talk to him and let him complain. We absorb it. Remember what I said? We absorb. If we get to absorb their complaints, they may not complain to somebody else. So that's what we're trying to do. Number three, celebrate successes. When you have a success, you tell your people. We have celebrated our number of guests. We had people join the church during COVID, online. We had baptism services. We had people join our Sunday school classes on Zoom. Now think about that. I would never have thought that. All our Sunday school classes had Zoom, and people wanted to be a part of it. They joined online. And we told our people, hey, we're growing online. And now they're coming. Now, last Sunday was our first Sunday back in life groups, those we wanted to. And so they're coming. Daily review your progress. Every morning, I look at where we are. Every day. Where we are and what's happening. And number five, a whole nother talk in itself. You got to take care of yourself. Because you got to be healthy. You got to be healthy. If you burn out, what good is it? If you get sick, what good is it? So, one of the decisions we made, we told our church, and they seem to be okay with it. they were gonna protect me as best they could. Now this, I didn't like this, so I'm not out with the people yet. On Sunday mornings, usually I'm out there shaking hands, and our staff and our deacons said, no, Pastor, you know, we want, you know, you preach and lead. Right now, you can't get sick. And I love what one guy said, later on, we don't care. I love that. And I thought, okay, that's honesty, I like that. So, later on, you don't care. Right now, but you gotta take care of yourself, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, you gotta take care of yourself. Hey guys, I think we're gonna eat and then come back and however you say.
Thank you, appreciate it. Good word today. Before we eat, let me just share a word of promotion about something Dan is leading in November. Dan is currently serving as our Pastors Conference president with the Kentucky Baptist Convention. And on November the 9th this year, at Bellevue Baptist Church in Owensboro, we will have our yearly Pastors Conference, and then on the 10th will be our annual meeting, and we would invite you to that. Our plans are to still have an in-person annual meeting. And this year's theme will be serving in faithfulness as a minister. So, good slate of speakers, and Dan is leading that, and we appreciate that. I don't see Stan, but
he's gonna get the food.
Gonna get the food, okay.
Right now.
So, by the way,
All
before
right.
we forget, I did bring a book for all of you, Jimmy Draper, North American Mission Board. I am an ambassador, and all that is, I just, you know, talk to pastors, encourage pastors. Anyway, they gave me a bunch of these to hand out to pastors whenever I have an opportunity, so these are, you're free. There's enough. If you want to take more than one back, I don't have to take them back, okay? If you have people in your church or other pastors, feel free to take as many as you desire.
and they're in this box right here. Since Stan is transitioning to get food, let's do a little Q&A now, if that's okay. Any questions for Dan?